Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm at York again today, but as you can see, I'm not actually on the platform yet. I'm looking across at the station from a different perspective because I want to add a bit of a history lesson into my video today. I'm at a location nearby the south end of the station. Just before we begin our look around this area, it's worth remembering that this isn't the city's first station. The original 1841 station stood just beyond the buildings we're about to explore. These structures here give us a rare glimpse into what the early site once looked like. Today we're heading towards the 1839 water tower and two Victorian railway sheds that now serve as a car park, but once formed the breathing heart of York's early railway history. Looking straight ahead in the distance is the archway, one of the last visible fragments of the original 1841 York station. Trains once passed directly through here into the grand train shed designed by George Townsend Andrews. We'll come back to this later, but for now it stands like a gateway into York's early railway landscape. As we head down towards Queen Street, these large brick buildings on the right come into view. They were built later during the North Eastern Railway's big expansion between the 1880s and the 1900s. These were the stores and wagon shops that supported the huge wagon works that once filled this entire area. They held wagon parts, timber, ironwork and engineering supplies, the everyday materials that kept York's railway industry running. The sheer size gives you a sense of how busy and how industrial this site became in the late Victorian and Edwardian periods. We're now at the water tower, one of the oldest surviving railway structures in the world. Built in 1839, 2 years before the first station opened, it was designed as a multi-purpose tower. The massive cast iron tank on top held 5,000 gallons of water, gravity feeding the steam locomotives of York and North Midland Railway. The ironworks wasn't imported, it was cast right here in York at the Walker Foundry on Walmgate. The bottom half served a completely different purpose. It was a coke store. Early steam locomotives didn't burn coal, they burned coke, a cleaner, hotter fuel. So this tower wasn't just about water, it was a combined fuel and water supply point for the very first locomotives to pull out of York's Temporary Station back in 1840. As we look around this Grade 2 listed building, you may have spotted areas where parts of the structure are missing. I'd assume these sections have been removed for safety. After nearly 2 centuries of exposure, the water tank itself is badly corroded and the brickwork is starting to flake away. So what's going to happen to this remarkable survivor? Well, I've got some geeky details to share. For decades, this Grade 2 listed landmark has stood derelict, a silent witness to the changing railway landscape. But it's finally been saved. It's been meticulously restored. Soon these walls will echo not with the sound of steam but with music. It's been converted into a brand new rehearsal space for the York Railway Institute Brass Band, ensuring this piece of 1839 history remains a living part of the city's culture. This new restoration includes a room within a room design. This protects the original 1839 brickwork while providing the soundproofing the band needs. The railway technology we see here in York didn't appear out of thin air. Just 16 years before York's water tower was built, George Stephenson was building the world's first iron railway bridge, the Gauntlet Bridge, for Stockton and Darlington. By the time the railways reached York, they had moved from experimental iron bridges to the grand stone arches and the massive workshops we're exploring today. It actually sat in the NRM car park in York for years before moving back to Shildon recently. What started as a daring experiment in the north and within a few short years became the breathing heart of industrial revolution, and York was right in the centre of it all. Just beyond the water tower are the two long brick sheds that survive from the original Queen Street Railway workshops. These buildings date back from the mid-19th century and were once part of a much larger complex of carriage and wagon repair shops. Historic accounts also suggest that a third shed once stood here, now long gone. With that in mind, let's take a look inside the surviving buildings. Together, the water tower, the archway of the original station and these two sheds are the last physical traces of York's first railway works. They tell the story of how the city's railway industry began, how it grew and how these early buildings have quietly survived as the railway around them has changed. Inside these sheds, railway workers repaired rolling stock, built wooden carriages and components, fitted ironwork and maintained the equipment that kept the railway running. Their long, narrow shape and pitched roofs are typical of early railway engineering buildings, simple, functional and built to last. Although they are used today as a car park, the structure you see is essentially the same one that the Victorian railway workers used over 150 years ago. The brickwork, the proportions, even the layout of the entrance all reflect the original industrial purpose. Now that we've taken a look around the old water tower and the surviving railway sheds, I'm heading back to the main station. This is where I'll switch back to some of my usual filming of modern day railway. A little later on in this video we'll return to the history and take a closer look at the current station itself, and then head over to the site of the original 1841 station to see where it all began. 155,341 Northern service. (91,109). And 82,208. Trainspotting Express service to Wakefield Kirkgate 185,149. Day, but that wind is giving me a bit of an issue, but I'm still enjoying the day. LNER service to London King's Cross 800,101, and once again I've got a bit of issue with the wind. Three 311, we've seen that a few times. Seems to follow me about that. (801,104). (800,205). Cross country service 221,117 coming into platform 6. Trainspotting Express service to Manchester 802,208. Green light for the Aberdeen via Edinburgh service to depart on platform 5. I've made my way back out and up onto the city walls to get a proper look at the station from the outside. From up here you really get a sense of just how impressive this place is. York's present railway station is one of the greatest Victorian statements in railway history, opened in 1877. It was the largest station in the world at the time. A sweeping curve of iron and glass designed to handle the growing traffic of a city that had become a key crossroads of the railway network. I'm now standing right outside the main entrance of the station, and as you can see, the York Gateway project is in full swing. But the most dramatic change is right behind me. For decades, the Queen Street Bridge blocked the view, but now it's gone. For the first time in generations, we can see clearly across to the 1841 archway where York's railway story truly began. It's like the city is finally breathing again and showing off its hidden history. We'll take a closer look at this later as I explore the site of the original station. As you step onto the platforms today, it's impossible not to feel the sense of ambition still lingering in the air. The vast roof arches overhead like a cathedral to the age of steam. Each rib of iron, a reminder of the engineers who pushed the boundaries of what a railway station could be. Even with modern day trains coming and going, there's still that echo of the past. A feeling that you're standing in a place built with a real purpose. The whole station seems to breathe with the history that's passed through it. As we look up at the roof, you can see why it was considered such an engineering marvel. The entire station was built on a graceful curve, allowing trains to flow through more smoothly and giving the platforms their distinctive shape. Those huge iron arches were revolutionary for their day, creating a light open space that must have felt almost futuristic to passengers arriving here in the late 19th century. Although the curve itself actually created a bit of an headache for the early drivers because they couldn't see the signals at the other end of the platform. The station's distinctive curve wasn't just an architectural flourish, it was a practical solution. The designers needed to align the platforms with the approach tracks from both the north and the south, all while keeping the new station outside the city walls. Building on a sweeping curve allowed trains to enter and leave more smoothly, avoiding tight junctions and reducing delays. It also created the dramatic roofline that makes York Station so recognisable today. When it opened in 1877, the station had 13 platforms, an enormous number for its time, reflecting York's importance as a major junction on the East Coast Main Line. Over the years, the layout has been altered, but the station still retains many of its original platforms, and the overall design remains remarkably close to the Victorian plan. Much of what we see today still reflects the original design. The long, elegant platforms, the soaring roof, and the overall layout were all part of a bold plan to modernise York's railway and move the main station outside of the city walls, something the cramped original station simply couldn't achieve. This station wasn't just built for beauty, it was built for a purpose. It connected York to the rest of the country at a time when rail travel was transforming Britain, and it quickly became one of the busiest and most important stations on the East Coast Main Line. Even now, standing beneath the great iron arches, you can still feel the ambition behind it. A station built not just for the needs of the 19th century, but for the future of rail travel. Now we've taken a look at the modern day station, we're going to step back in time and head over to where the original station once stood.
The 1336 cross-country service to Edinburgh.
I'm back up on the city walls now, looking down at where York's original station once stood. Before we head down for a closer look, it's worth remembering how this part of the story began. In 1839, a temporary wooden station was built outside the city walls while the first arch was cut through and the train shed was being prepared. Just 2 years later, in 1841, the first permanent station opened inside the city walls, built by the York and North Midland Railway. It served the city until the present station opened in 1877. I'm now down at ground level, stood right in front of the archway that once formed the entrance into York's original station. When you're up close like this, you really get a sense of how much history is built into these stones. As I walk through the archway, I'm actually walking along the route the tracks would have taken as they approached the original station. Looking down to the left as we walk through, just a few steps from here is where the original station itself would have stood. Looking around this area, you start to notice other little clues in the landscape that point back to the original station's layout. And as you look back towards the archway, you can see a small brick building tucked just off to the side. Nobody knows for certain what it was used for, but it is often suggested it may have been a crossing keeper's or gatekeeper's shelter. Whatever its purpose, it's one of the last surviving pieces connected to the original station. This brings us to the end of today's journey through York's railway history. I've rumbled on long enough now, so thank you for sticking with me. If you enjoyed this little look back at York's railway past, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to my channel. I'm leaving you with a few photos from the National Railway Museum. Thank you again for watching and take care.